Hello and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
I was watching the music video, the fan music video of the execution of Charles I for Curse My Name, right? And like all their outfits too are like they're fancy. They're not like crazy like China, but they're still fancy. And I was thinking, I have proof that we are poorer now than we have ever been in history. Because if you have enough time to put on those clothes every single day, you are a richer person because you don't have to work as often. Like the fact that you could move at a slow enough pace to actually put on those clothes.
Well, the Victorian trains and the women's dresses.
Oh, yeah.
Where you actually needed other people to help you walk around.
Yeah. Now, that said, the Victorian era, I think, might have actually been the poorest era in human history.
Yes.
But
I think the Victorian era also slightly destroyed England. And
I think we are actually still recovering from that nightmare.
Well, actually, so that's another parallelism. Is the Victorian era was happening at that same time that Bismarck was doing those things and that...
not quite. Sherlock Holmes was later. But you have, Victoria was alive for a long time, so it's But yeah, you have, Jack the Ripper sort of thing going around. And
Yeah, so the Japanese also, they unified, and then they said, okay, we want to be a great empire. How do you do that? Well, you colonize a bunch of people. And then they looked at their neighbors.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
And so they took over Korea and China during World War II.
And attacked Russia.
Yeah.
And then they went for the Philippines and everything.
And a bunch of American islands.
Yeah. So, so going on, actually, if I can continue off of the Charles I, because I was looking a bit into, reminding myself, it's been a long time since, it was grade 9 history, I think, we learned about one of the many English civil wars.
Yeah.
And the Bishops' War and all that.
One of the 3 English civil wars?
12.
There was only 3.
No, there was
the others don't count.
There was so
many. The
many.
others do not count.
The British were just constantly warring. And what about stuff like the Bishops' War, where the king declares war on the church? Is that not a civil war?
Nope. There's only been 3 British civil wars.
I'm pretty sure Charles I, alone did 3 civil wars.
There was the War of the Roses. There was
the English
the
Civil
War
War.
of the Dukes. And the English Civil War.
And the English Civil War.
No, there was the one that got the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
And there was the War of the Roses. And that's it.
So Charles I alone, right? There was the War of the Bishops, where it was the king versus the bishops.
Yeah.
Then there was the English Civil War, where it was half the loyalists versus the crown, versus the Parliament, I guess. And then, after Charles was in prison, Scotland declared war on England because Charles was a Scottish king. And so then Cromwell's New Model Army went and crushed Scotland. That was count. 3 civil wars.
That's not a civil war. That's the Scottish fighting the English. That's not a civil war.
They were the same country.
Nope, that's the Scottish versus the English. That's not a civil war.
They're the same country.
Nope.
If Quebec attacks the rest of Canada, that's a civil war.
No, it isn't.
Well, maybe not with Quebec. If Alberta attacks the rest of the country, that's a civil war.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Scotland...
No.
So anyways, I was looking into Charles I and the idea of was he a good king? Was he a bad king? Was he...
He was an unfortunate king.
And what's really interesting, and this will actually tie into the next thing I want to talk about, which is Sargon released a video recently about the flaws of liberalism, which I thought was the best statement of his argument I've heard so far. Sargon of Akkad, the YouTuber, not the ancient Sumerian emperor, or Akkadian, sorry.
Wasn't he a Mesopotamian?
Yeah, but he was Akkadian. So Mesopotamian means between 2 rivers.
Yeah.
So every empire that was between the Tigris and the Euphrates was a Mesopotamian empire.
Okay. Yeah. But wasn't he the greatest of the Mesopotamian?
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh doesn't count.
Gilgamesh was obviously the greatest Mesopotamian king.
He may or may not be real.
Yeah, but...
Sargon was.
But Gilgamesh was the best. I don't know. Sargon, I think Sargon was actually not a great... he went off to fight the Persians and then he died, I think, almost immediately. I think Sargon II was the guy that put the empire together, but my memory...
Sargon II, the Sargon we know about is the cracked eye Sargon.
Oh, okay. So then, I think he was the one that actually, was a pretty decent emperor.
Yeah, no, the Sargon that's famous, the one that we have the statue of and, the face bust, that's the famous Sargon.
I think Kurosh the Great was technically a Mesopotamian emperor because he conquered Mesopotamia.
Kurosh was the emperor of the universe.
Yeah, but, he was, Persian, right? But he conquered, Mesopotamia, I think, so...
This is something insane about Kurosh. So,
He's the only Messiah that's not Jewish or something?
when he died, everyone knew.
Prophet, sorry, not Messiah, right?
Everyone knew.
Right.
When Kurosh died. A great king had died.
Birds fell out of the trees.
Like, the Jews were sad
Yeah.
that Kurosh died. The Egyptians were sad that Kurosh died.
The Akkadians were like, yay!
No, they were sad. The people that Kurosh crushed under his heel were sad. And it's interesting why they're sad. Is because Kurosh wasn't Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
He was Kurosh the Great. It's kind of weird because it's a much older history, but it's a level of greatness up. He was actually a great man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easier to be a great man when your empire is smaller, right? Like, he didn't actually have, like, compared to Genghis Khan or Victoria or Alexander even, his empire wasn't that big.
No, but what I mean by a great man is he was, by like all accounts from back then, like you have to compare apples to oranges.
Yeah.
But all accounts back then, he was kind and noble and a good emperor who actually like did good things for the people. Like why the Jewish people loved him so much is he returned their lands to them. And he basically, Kurosh, King of Kings, that's like one of his names.
Yeah.
What he did is he looked at the world of the area he had control of and the state it was in and said, this is wrong. We're going to put things right and how they should be.
If you think about it, though, like, Justin Trudeau was a better emperor than Kurosh because he had more land, so...
Maybe.
And he was probably less tyrannical.
Yeah.
Well, it's debatable. I would have to...
Like, Kurosh is on the same level as that Egyptian pharaoh.
Ramses.
Yeah, Ramses.
Ramses the second or something, yeah.
Yeah, Ramses the Great.
Yeah, Ramses. But yeah, so Charles... The problem with Charles... So he had...
A lot of debt.
Well, he had like three main problems that people didn't like him for. And, well, the debt wasn't the problem. The problem was that he raised taxes.
Yeah.
And so, but that ties into another one of the problems. But I just want to talk about like
war in France.
I just want to like compare. Whatever. I just want to compare like modern politicians to like past ones. So like the American Revolution, there was like
2.5% T-tax.
There's like tax. Charles I, he raised a tax. Like there was another one I had. I lost it. Anyways, all these people doing minor taxes. But to be fair, Charles also did two other, at least, very bad things. So, the second one, he married a Catholic woman.
Ugh.
So that was why he went to war with the bishops.
Yeah.
And so you can say marrying a Catholic, very bad, right?
Yeah.
But the really bad thing, I think, for the people was the fact he started a war because he and the bishops weren't getting along, right? Yeah. I think that's pretty bad. Raising the taxes thing was bad because the parliament didn't pass that bill.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually the fact that he raised the taxes. Like, people didn't like that. But the problem was the parliament didn't actually agree to raise taxes. But Charles believed in the divine right of kings. He was a little... I guess it wasn't as popular in his time.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they had a civil war. But he thought that the king was above the law. So the law said you're not allowed to raise this tax. And he said, I'm the king. I can raise the tax. And they said, no, you can't. It's against the law. And he said, yeah, but the law doesn't apply to me because I'm the king. And so he was considered to be a bit of a tyrant by people, but he was actually quite a well, spoken and written guy. Yeah. And so I read something he wrote. I wish I had the exact quote here, but it was something along the lines of, I believe all men should be free and treated equally. In all matters except in legislation, essentially. Mm. And in that, you cannot say the sovereign is the same as the people. Because the sovereign's job is to rule, and so he actually has to be treated differently in that sense. Yeah. And so he actually believed that the king was a necessary force outside of the law and outside of the people, and that was his duty. So he could have been like in a different time period. He might have been a great king because he didn't dislike his people. Yeah. He just thought that he should be given absolute authority in all things.
Was that his third failure?
Well, that's tied into the divine right of kings, right? Like he basically said his third failure was the divine right of kings.
Do you know he wasn't meant to be king?
No?
No, he wasn't the heir.
Oh.
It was a man named Arthur was the heir before him.
Oh dear.
Arthur died. And that's how he became heir.
He was also Scottish, which probably didn't...
Yeah, no, Arthur... The thing about Arthur as well, Arthur was super well loved. He was trained for the position. He was very well spoken. A lot of other people really liked him, like other nobility in other countries. And I think he either like got
the return of King Arthur.
He got ambushed in France and died, or he died of dysentery. Why I'm saying I'm not certain is because there's two different guys, both named Arthur, who are supposed to become king.
Yeah.
And I know one of them died of dysentery, and the other one got ambushed in France and murdered.
It's a little suspicious, isn't it? Although our current king is Charles, and given the track record of the Charleses, like Charles I was executed, Charles II wasn't exactly. I don't think he was liked hugely. Like they reinstated him, so they liked him enough, I guess. But I wouldn't choose Charles for it. Arthur, I guess, is cursed though at this point.
Yeah. Well, Arthur is meant to be a name of destiny.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful naming someone Arthur.
So Charles I, he actually, I was reading. It's really weird. Like you read the First Nation histories, right? Yeah. And I've been reading right now the Vuntagwitchin, like Old Crow, like way northern Yukon sort of histories, and like Yukon Plains, Crow Flats, that sort of thing. Whenever you hear First Nation elders or younger First Nations, or you read their histories, it's like, we were living like our life and our culture, and then white men came and they ruined everything, or that's reductive, but you get a lot of that. Or like, we must teach white men our ways so that they can be one with nature and that sort of thing. The Old Crow story. So the first man to meet the First Nations was this guy named Grasspants. Yeah. And he was out, it was a nice summer day, so he was just out going for a boat, and he'd parked on a short bank, and he was the first person to see white men. I don't ever like the term white men to describe Europeans. Also, the reason I don't like the white Anglo-Saxon, because I think white is not, in the United States, white might be a culture. In the rest of the world, I don't think white is a culture, right? You've got British, you've got French, you've got Germans, you've got Swiss, you've got Armenians, you've got so I don't like, you've got Turks, you've got Greeks, sort of. Well, Greeks and Turks, sort of, but.
Well, I feel like WASP is kind of silly because Anglo-Saxon would be white.
Yeah, so ASP. I'd go for ASP. Like,
yeah.
Like Anglo-Saxon, sure, fair enough. Yeah, and Protestant. Anglo-Saxon Protestant, fair enough. Yeah, white is.
White just seems a little silly. Like, just thinking about it now, like, you don't need the wasp.
Asp is a snake. Like, it's a real word, too. So.
And it's a snake found in... No, that's the adder is found in England. I don't know if that's
I don't know British snakes. My knowledge of British snakes is lacking right now.
I know where it comes from. Oh, that's so stupid.
What?
It's so they can't be Scottish or Irish.
Oh, maybe.
No, that is literally the reason.
Well, Scottish are white. I don't know.
But they're not even Anglo-Saxons. They're Celts, but that's probably the reason. And maybe it's also so they can't be Welsh.
Yeah, maybe. But Welsh are
Welsh.
Welsh aren't Anglo-Saxon, though, so...
Yeah, exactly. But that's probably the reason.
Like, the Welsh are one of the few British groups that aren't really Anglo-Saxon. Yeah. That was kind of their thing.
We're also, like, mostly Welsh and Scottish on
so we've got, like,
the side.
Arthurian, like, heritage. So, anyways, so Grasspants saw these two white guys paddling up the river. Yeah. And he's like, what on earth are those? Like, they looked weird to him, right? Yeah. And so, because he hadn't seen... Which is... It's weird you don't really... The modern world is so different that you see someone who's a different skin color, you're like, yeah, whatever. But then you hear these stories, like, I heard the story about this very kindly old, she's like a Chinese grandmother or something. Yeah. And there's like this little black kid was standing next to her, and she took a napkin from her pocket and she licked it, and then she started dabbing at the black boy's face because she was trying to clean this dirt off his face. It's like that. She's not being rude or anything. Mm-hmm. She's just like, oh, let me get that for you. Yeah. Anyways, Grasspants sees these guys coming up the river. I would love to know why his name is Grasspants, because that's a weird name. But anyways, he sees these guys.
He grasped his pants.
He sees these two white guys paddling up the river, and they stop next to him. And he's terrified, like, because he sees these people that look alien to him. And so he's freaked out. And they come over to him, and they light a fire next to him. And they put a frying pan on the fire. But he has no clue what a frying pan is. So he calls, apparently his whole life, because he's like a real person. Yeah. Like, not that long ago, because that's the crazy thing about northern Yukon. Like, this was like 150 years ago. Yeah. Like this dude's children are still around, maybe, or like grandchildren are still around, sort of thing, potentially. So we know what he thought because he told people later on. Yeah. But he was saying, he's like, they had a pan with a handle, because he didn't know what a frying pan was. So he's for the rest of his life, apparently, he always called it a pan with a handle. And he said they put it on the fire, and then they filled it with water, and then they poured ashes into the pan. And he was like, why are they pouring ashes into the pan? And then they like started mixing up the ashes. And then when they'd finally mixed up the ashes, They took a bunch of what was it, mouse poop, and they poured it into the pan, and they, like a bunch of these white pellets, and they poured it into the pan. He's like, what on earth? And then they took a bunch of mountain berries, which I don't know what those are, but they took a bunch of mountain berries, and they poured that into the pan. And then they fried them all up, and then they came over to him and said, eat this. And I guess they knew his language a little bit, because, language transfer. And he was...
Gave him bannock?
They gave him bannock, rice, and raisins.
Yeah.
And he was terrified of... He was like, I don't want to eat ashes and mouse poop, but I'm so scared of these guys, I'm going to eat it in front of them. So he starts eating this mouse poop and ashes, because he thought the flour was ashes, right?
Yeah.
And so he ate all of it, and it didn't say he liked it or not, but he was just like freaked out. And then these guys, they took all his clothes off. And dear Penthouse, the strangest thing happened to me while I was studying that. So they took all his moose hide clothes, and then they gave him like felt clothing. So like, black pants and suit and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or probably more hardy than that, because they were explorers. But they gave him like a bunch of their own clothing. And then they opened up his bag, and they took out his flint, and they took it away. And he's like, oh great, now I'm going to die, because I don't have a flint, and that's the only thing keeping me alive.
Yeah.
But then they gave him a box of matches. Or something. He called it frozen matches, which I'm not sure what that is. I assume it's just matches. Yeah. But anyways, they gave him a box of fire starter or something, basically. And they put that in his bag. And so he's like, and he knew about that. So I'm suspicious that these were actually the first Europeans. But anyways, so they did that. And then they took his bow, and they took that away. And then they gave him a rifle, and they gave him like a bunch of things of pellets and ammunition and whatnot. And then they taught him how to shoot it.
So I'm imagining, right, you have Age of Empires game, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got, like, not quite a caveman, but let's just say a caveman. And then these two guys walk over, just take all his stuff and, like, give him the modern world and walk off. Like, basically, like, getting upgraded.
Yeah.
So there's grass hands perspective here is like, what on earth's going on? What are those two Europeans doing? Like, what's their mentality? It's like, oh, I say, well, they probably would have been like Californian.
I think they were Dutch, possibly, or something. But anyways, yeah.
Well, we'll just go with a typical British accent, because I'm not going to do a Dutch accent. Like, I say, dear friend, look over there. That's a funny-looking fellow. Oh, look, all his technology is not sufficient. Let's upgrade it a little bit for him. Oh, what's this? Oh, how quaint. Here, we'll give him a rifle with some shot in. Oh, what's this? He's got a flint and steel. Those aren't efficient anymore. Let's give him some matches. He looks a little peckish. He needs some meat on those bones. Let's give him some bannock.
I think what I think they were doing was they were trying to do a good deed, and also they wanted like souvenirs, and so they were probably taking his stuff,
but trading basically
without his But I think they wanted his bow because it was cool, and they wanted his clothes because they were cool. But they were like giving him stuff in return. The flint, that might have just been them considering him doing a favor. I really don't think it was, because the way it was, the fact that he thought, if I lose my flint, I'm going to freeze to death in the summer, makes me think that flint was actually pretty hard to come by. And matches aren't going to last forever. So I do think that was not a nice thing to do, actually. But they took... Anyways, so the end of the story is essentially he goes back to his people, and they say these white guys, they go around to villages and they start teaching them about bannock and flour and giving them guns and stuff. And nobody starved again. That's like the end of the story. It's like, because winters were hard and people used to starve, and then everyone was warm and nobody ever starved again. Like, the people in the really far north, they had such a different experience from at least some of them, right? I'm sure some of them didn't like it, but a lot of them were like, thank goodness we're not starving anymore. Now, I did read stories of like that guy's generation's like children and grandchildren. So this was a guy who, he was like the last generation to not, his kid, I think his friends went to Carcross school and like the residential school and whatnot. He didn't, though. And he was kind of despairing that his grandchildren, when he was training them, if suddenly the roads cut off, because it is the Yukon, right? Like, if the roads cut off, they would starve to death. Whereas he could go into the woods forever and he would be fine. And so he was like, we have become so reliant on the production chain that it's actually made these people weaker. And so he said, you have to learn half and half. But it's really interesting, because he said you have to learn half white, half, I forget what he called it, Gwich'in or something like that, right? Which, again, I don't like the framing. But the interesting thing was he believed there was value in both.
Oh, yeah.
But he said, like, I don't want you to just be, like, totally... Because I think...
Well, so here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it's good to be able to go into the woods and survive.
Yeah.
But...
The strength of a production chain is immeasurable.
The strength of the production chain is measurable. And if you go into the woods, a bear will swat you, you're dead. A tree will fall on you, you're dead. You walk on ice and fall and you're dead.
Yeah, there is bad luck that can happen.
You go out hunting and there's just nothing to hunt. You're dead.
But I say all this because one of the takeaways from one of the elders that was introduced was she said they bring their food and their guns and it's amazing, but they bring their democracy and it's destroying us because democracy encourages you to vote for your leader, which means that you will always have people who are on one side or the other, which means that instead of having a ruler above the people united, you instead have the people against each other voting for the ruler, right? So you have the left and the right, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, you have the liberals and the conservatives. So it actually turns your population against each other. And that was similar to Charles's argument, not that he believed democracy would cause this, but that he said the leader needs to be the one above, that the people are united underneath, right?
Yeah, and that's why democracy is gay, and we need to go back
Charles
to monarchy.
Was executed. So when you're arguing for Charles, you are arguing for the same line of reasoning that led to his execution, which doesn't mean that could mean that we made a mistake back then and that we need to go back. But that was...
Well, everyone... And the self-balancing
Yeah.
of democracy is voting for the other party, but that still turns you against the people before. The self-balancing for monarchy is every once in a while, you sharpen your pitchforks and you grab your torches.
Yeah, you kick out the monarch and put a new one in.
Yeah.
Yeah, which... And
it's much simpler to do that because you're united against each other. You can all agree he sucks instead of going, oh, I like this guy. Why are you guys all stupid idiots for hating him? You must be ill-educated, backwater, inbred savages.
So instead of hating just the king, you hate half your country.
Yeah.
Yeah, But then the problem is you do have, like the Civil War was royalists versus parliamentarians or whatever, right? So you still do have that division. So I don't actually think it is necessarily true, but in theory it could be better. But Charles, so there was a book written around the time Charles was being executed by Milton.
Milton?
No, I hiccuped. It was by Milton, who was wasn't he like a utilitarian? Like, didn't he found some sort of philosophy of some sort? Anyways,
Milton Fried?
No, Milton. Which was his last name was Milton. It's like the longest title of a book I've ever seen. It's like 4 sentences long. It has
You've read Royal Road.
It has like periods in it, and like
Royal Road has periods in it.
So the book is called, I don't have it memorized at all, but it's called On the Tenure of Kings and Their Magistrates, who by something, men who are liberal and in suit of parliamentary must depose the...
Isn't that just a line in the song of...
Yeah, so Curse My Name is based on the title
of that book?
Of this book, basically. Like, I think the book might have a longer title than the lyrics of the song.
Because you just said a bunch of lyrics from the Blind Garden song.
Yeah, the first line of Curse My Name is on the tenure of kings and magistrates. And so that it is based on Milton's book, which is about justifying the death of Charles I. Which basically confirms that the song is actually about Cromwell and Charles I.
Yeah.
And Milton. So it seems to suggest that the song is about the first singer, like the first character in the song is Milton, saying that essentially Milton's argument was basically that you should be allowed to sentence your kings to death. Yeah. Which wasn't a, that was a controversial idea at the time. But Milton said, no, you should be able to sentence your kings to death. And so that was his argument of his book, and that was the defense of that book. But the person who says, curse my name, but remember the truth, I'm not sure who that is still. That could be Charles or that could be Cromwell.
I think it's Charles.
I don't think it's Milton. It could also be Fairfax, I guess, but Fairfax is an interesting character to me because who the heck is Fairfax? Like, he was the leader of the New Model Army. But why do we know about Cromwell instead of Fairfax? That's what I find interesting. Like, Cromwell was the guy that installed himself as Lord Protector. Yeah. And he was like Fairfax's second in command or something. So do you think Fairfax, like, imagine you have this army, you've just defeated the king's forces, and then your second in command's like, okay, I'm in charge now. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I don't think they were ever enemies, though.
Well,
so.
I think it's a duet, actually, between... I think it's both Charles and Cromwell saying, let them curse my name.
It could be. Because
there's the two other ones. I think it's an amazing song. It's absolutely amazing songs. The part where they start chanting in the background, remove his crown and take him down.
Yeah, that's like the people.
That's the people, but then it's like, we can't take it anymore, our voices will be heard, we can't take it anymore. That's also the people.
Yeah, that's like the Long Parliament and the people who are taking down, I think. Yeah. So there's a painting of Cromwell visiting Charles's coffin before Charles was buried. Yeah. So this is really interesting. So when they sentenced Charles to death, that was weird in of itself, because you basically had a court proceeding of a parliament that sentenced a king to death, and and there was still a debate. Wait, is the king above the parliament, or does the parliament serve the king? And the argument of the New Model Army and the parliament was nobody is above the law.
Yeah.
And so they sentenced the king to death, and then they went to Gregory, who was the common executioner.
Yeah.
Which is it's not just he's like common executioner. I guess is a title of some sort. I'm not sure what the title is, but essentially he was the guy you go to kill people.
Well, he would be the executioner of the commons.
Yeah, but like there wasn't a royal executioner because you didn't kill. Oh, I guess okay. A royal executioner would serve the royal.
Yeah.
It doesn't kill royal people.
Yeah.
Because you didn't kill royal people.
Yeah, and the executioner of the commons
would
served
kill
the commons.
Would kill the common people. Yeah.
He didn't kill the common
Sorry, he would serve the parliament. Yeah.
Yeah, he served the commons.
Yeah. So they go to Gregory, and they say, "Okay, we've sentenced Charles to death. Can you kill him?" And he's like, "No." Like, what do you mean? He's like, "I'm not killing the king." Like, we'll give you 250 pounds, which was like an insane amount of money back then. This was like the 1600s. And he's like, "No, I'm not killing the king." Yeah. And so then they went around to a bunch of executioners, and we don't know who they eventually agreed upon, because so it was the practice at the time that the executioner would just go up with their sword, I think it was, and like cut off the head of the king, right? But when someone finally agreed, like they were like, okay, they put out like posters, I think. They're like, we'll give 250 pounds to whoever executes the king. When the guy finally went up, he wore a hood because he didn't want the people to see him kill the king.
Yeah.
And
did he use an axe instead of a sword so they didn't know it was a sword?
Well, I don't know if it was an axe or a sword they used, but I think they just used a sword at the time. Like they used the normal execution method. But now I'm not sure why he wore the mask. Like I understand wearing a mask. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I would wear a mask too if I was executing the king. But the question was, did he not want the crowd to kill him after he killed the king?
Potentially.
Did he not want to be the face of the person that broke all precedent of the entire country for like 100 or 1,000 years?
Was he even an executioner?
Well, actually, we can get to that because that's interesting. Or was the guy that eventually went up there, did he love the king and he didn't want the king to see his face, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a few possibilities. Because what happened was when Charles went up and was executed, which it's an interesting execution in and of itself. Again, Charles was very well spoken, so he has this. He was recorded saying something along the lines of, "It's chilly out, and I don't want my children to think I shivered. So give me a second shirt." So he wore a second shirt when he went up there. His last words were actually spoken to like the deacon that was leading him up to the execution block, and we don't know what it was because it was like whispered back and forth. So we don't actually know what his last words were. And I don't think the deacon heard him either because they asked the deacon afterwards, like, what did he say to you? He was like, oh, I didn't hear him. Mm-hmm. So we don't actually know what he said in the end, I don't think. And he lay down on his back, I think, or was it on his front?
It was on his front.
Yeah. But he put out his arms to let them know he was ready and to like be embraced by God, basically. Yeah. Executioner cut off his head in a single blow. And the wound, they examined it and it was done very cleanly. So it was like as humane an execution as possible, basically. Which means they think it was a professional executioner. And the greatest executioner of the lands was Gregory. So there's a theory that Gregory eventually took the money on the condition he was allowed to wear a mask. So they couldn't see him. Because the next thing, it was probably someone, this is another part to it, it was probably someone that was well known. So, and Gregory was famous. Gregory was so famous, the stockade, is that what it's? No, sorry, the
guillotine?
No, they didn't have those. The noose thingy, the gallows, was called Gregory's Tree.
Oh.
And the name Gregory declined in popularity rapidly after Gregory, and you would say, oh yeah, they're sending him to the Gregory. So Gregory became a byword for executioner. People stopped naming their kids Gregory because and the thing, Gregory wasn't necessarily a bad man, right? It's just executioners were looked at differently. Yeah. And this is something, I don't know if I've talked about before, but like executioners actually had troubles finding family members, or relationships, basically.
There's executioner only bars, basically.
Yeah, like you could only be friends with other executioners. You could only marry like executioners' daughters, and they were like a different breed of human almost. Like they were like kind of like royalty, where they had different genetics.
The game where you play as Henry the moron.
Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
So in the first game, you basically have to break into an executioner's house and steal something from him, from a grave. And he lives alone in this open field by the gallows in this like sort of house complex, which is separated from the common village by a forest.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were isolated.
And he has a graveyard outside his house where they bury the executed victims. So people who the executioner kills get buried in his graveyard rather than in the church graveyard.
Yeah, it was fairly easy work in a lot of ways and fairly well paid, but it was like you and your family. Like even the children of the executioners were reviled. So it was guaranteed to be a family business. Yeah. Like your kids would be the next executioner because nobody else wanted to become an executioner. Yeah. So your family was locked into this path that everyone else was a part of. But Charles was tried for treason. Because essentially he had gone against the will of the Parliament, and it was decided by the Parliament that the Parliament was the final authority. So the Parliament wasn't being treasonous from the Civil War. Charles was. And there's a process for executing traitors, or treasonous people. I don't know what the term is. Is it just traitor?
Yeah, it's traitor.
Yeah. So for executing traitors, which is essentially that you send them to death, you cut off their head, like you said. Mm. Then the executioner picks up the head of the person and shows it to the crowd, and he says, here is what happens to traitors, or something like, or treasoners, whatever. That was what they did, basically. And so when he cut off Charles's head, the executioner picked up his head to show to the crowd. And first of all, apparently, the moment the blade came down, one of the, what are they called, magistrates, he recorded in his diary about the event, he heard a moan from the crowd like he had never heard before and never wanted to hear again. So it disturbed him hugely. Like the people were not happy about the event. Like they were freaked out by what happened. And I don't know, again, was it because they were freaked out that a king they loved had died? Or was it they were freaked out that they had potentially gone against God, right? Like they were pushing the limits on what they thought was actually possible. Like you don't just sentence a king to death.
Yeah,
right?
It could have been both.
Could have been a bit of both. But the people did not like the execution at all. And then related to that, the executioner picked up his head to show the crowd, and he didn't speak. And so was that out of respect for the king, or was that, which is another theory, he didn't want anyone to recognize his voice?
Yeah.
Because if it was Gregory, they would know his voice. And if he says, here's what happens to traitors, they're like, wait a minute, that guy in that mask is Gregory. Because they think the guy didn't want anyone to know who did it. So they think he might have been quiet just to protect his identity. And so it was, it was quite the event there. Where was I going with that? Then he was, it was a few years later, the government decided they'd made a mistake with like the execution, basically. Yeah. And they got rid of Cromwell. Well, I think Cromwell died of a heart attack or something, but...
Cromwell became king.
No, he became protector.
Yeah, which is basically king, and he wanted his children to inherit it.
He wanted his son to become the Lord Protector after him. Yeah, but he wasn't king. He was just...
and Cromwell is despised.
Cromwell was, have you heard of libertarian monarchism? Where you basically have a king to enforce a libertarianism, like no laws, essentially. Yeah. I think that was what Cromwell probably... Like, I'm not saying...
No, he was a Puritan.
Yeah, but he was a protector to enforce no king, right? Yeah. So he was me and my children will need to make sure that there is never a king. Yeah. He was like Denethor, like he was the steward that was making sure there would never be another king.
Yeah, he was despised.
Yeah. But after he had a heart attack, I think it was, and they said, no, your son doesn't get to be in charge. I think it was Fairfax even that said that, who was like, the leader of that army.
Yeah. The leader of the Lobster Tails?
Well, at least the New Model Army. I don't know if the Lobster Tails were like a division of the army that Cromwell led or what. I don't know the details enough. I was very briefly like skimming through stuff. But they reinstated Charles II, who was Charles's son, as king. They're like, oh, we made a mistake. Sorry, you're king now. and they went back to that. How was I going to tie this to... Well, so Sargon was on the Sitch and Adams show recently. Yeah. And he actually was able to ask him a question in the chat, which he replied to me, which was very handy because I wasn't sure about something, and then he confirmed it for me. But he was talking about how he thinks that liberalism, left or right, is a problem, and he thinks that left and right is actually a feature of liberalism as a whole. So he was saying, I'm not a right-winger anymore. I'm not a left-winger. I'm just not a liberal, which means... And so what you need... is a system, and he talked about the Americans have troubles with this concept, especially of so Americans, when they think of a king, they think that the people serve the king, right? Yeah. So Sitch was saying something like, what, you think everyone should like be in servitude to a king? That's the solution to no liberalism? But the rest of the world, I think, sees kings as, at least ideally, the servants of the people, right? Like,
not Asia.
They're the well, even in Asia, they're
a conduit of God.
Yeah, but and it doesn't mean that you can tell the king what to do. If it's more like so there was a concept that the Saxons had, right, which was Goldfriend. Mm. And I've been trying to translate The Wanderer. It's been a little hobby of mine. The Anglo-Saxon poem. Yeah. And there's this word Goldfriend a few times, which I was trying to figure out for ages, and I think I know what it means now, because it's a weird concept. Basically, you'd have like an Uber friend who all your other friends were he was their gold friend. Yeah. So like you and all your buddies, you had one gold friend, and he would just like, you'd hang out at his place, you would like lie on his lap, you would eat his food, he would give you gifts of gold and treasure.
He'd rub your tummy.
I don't know about that one, but there is actually a line in The Wanderer where he says, I'll wake up from dreams where I'm lying my head on my gold friend's lap, and like, because, he misses his friends hugely, because basically, I translated the first line, I think I did a great job of it, just to pat myself on the back, but it was, often the lonely was spared from the sword, and so he must suffer the grace of his Lord. That's how I translated it. But essentially what happened was, he was in a battle, and all his friends and his gold friend died. But through grace of God, he survived. Yeah. Which he believes to be this massive curse. Because he is just alone. And he wanders, he like boats across the sea looking for a place where he can talk to people. And so, it's not like he's in exile, but he's not actually, he's not disliked. So he can go to another, he went to another Lord's Hall to find if he could hear word of his people, basically. He wanted to reminisce, like, oh, you remember Iverson, he was great. But every Lord's Hall he goes to that accepts him, they don't know his family, they don't know his friends, they don't know his gold friend. And so he sits there in this hall and he sees people dancing and cheering, and like he's sitting by the fire and they're handing him gifts again. And he's just sitting there and he's like, all pleasure's cold. Like, I'm just frozen inside. Yeah. And he'll go to sleep and he'll remember his friends and he'll think, there they are. Or he'll be boating and he'll see like a bird or something, right? And he'll be like, wait, and he'll think it's foggy and he'll think, wait, that's my friend's boat. And he'll boat towards it and then the bird flies away. Yeah. And he'll just be like, every moment of joy from remembering his friends makes it all the worse when he realizes that they're gone. Yeah. And so it's this devastating poem of loneliness. But a gold friend, I think, is essentially your boss. Like, I think that's the translation. Like, I wouldn't use it in my poetic translation, but I think it's your boss. Like, the person that gives you your pay, essentially, for doing your job. And so a king is kind of like that, where a good boss doesn't lord over you and make you do petty stuff for their own enrichment. Mm-hmm. They just direct everyone, and they are the ones that actually enrich you by paying you. And
here's a little story about Japan in World War II. Yeah. So Emperor Hirohito, basically they forced him to, there's a famous picture of him in that suit standing next to, I think, the President of the United States or a general. That's the same thing, wasn't it, at the time?
After, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, but they forced him to stand next to him to show how short he was in comparison. Yeah. But he was also ordered to do a radio broadcast for all Japan, basically saying we're surrendering. Yeah. And a lot of people in Japan had never heard Hirohito's voice. Yeah. And they were basically told, you have to turn on the radios, you have to listen to it, this is what you're going to do. And it's like, oh, it's Hirohito. And so they dressed up in their finest clothing because the emperor was going to speak to them. Right. And he was literally, apparently the emperor of Japan is weird because Japan has such a big history with their emperors and like the warlords being in charge. Shogun? Yeah, the shogun being in charge instead of the emperor. But the emperor basically had like the title of Amaterasu. So he's like the sun god? The sun god, yes. Yeah. The emperor was literally the sun god in Japan. Right. And so that's part of them actually hearing his voice on the radio. He's just a man and showing the picture of him next to right. So making him human. And they made him dress in normal clothing, not like the emperor's regard. They like put him in a small crumpled suit. Right. So to just show like, here he is, he's human. Yeah. Yeah. This is your emperor. Well, that's the interesting thing about... and then there's the whole Forbidden City. That movie from 2003, which was... It might have been called The Tenure of Kings or something. But... no, I don't think that's right. But the one about the execution,
the movie isn't actually about the Civil War. It's actually just about the execution of Charles the First.
Oh yeah.
And like it's the one that the person made that music video from. The what's interesting is the king, and this was probably done by the parliamentarians as well, but the king was kind of a normal guy. Like he was wearing basically the same clothes as everyone else. He had fancier rings and stuff, but he was basically just another guy in the parliament. Like he's probably richer than like your average peasant, but he was just, and that's also partly because England. It's weird they became an empire that conquered the world, although maybe not because most empires seem to start fairly poor. But the Brits, like a British king had like 500 subjects. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but like they were just the biggest like boss on the block basically for a lot of their history. The British king was just like the dude. Like you would walk across him in the street and be like, oh yeah, there's the king, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Asia it was much more like they're this mystical power of supreme, divinely ordained, and they did believe in the divine right of kings in like France and England as well. But it was, I think that arose later, and I'd be curious to see the history of divine right of kings because I bet like
Charlemagne.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like I bet like an Alfred or an Ethelred, like they were basically just chiefs, right? Like they were just like bigger than normal chiefs.
Yeah.
Like Viking, like or Canute even, right? Like I don't think Canute thought maybe he thought Odin was on his side, but
Canute was a Christian,
right? Yeah.
That was like one of the big things about Canute.
Yeah. Bluetooth was the guy that originally spread Christianity, I think.
Yeah. His father, though, you could say Canute's father,
or
Has is something with an H.
Or the guy before Canute, who was the first guy to try to conquer everything. Who I told you about that guy. He was at a dinner, and there was this one-eyed guy there that he was like talking to for the whole dinner, and he was just having this fascinating conversation with him.
Talked with Odin,
and then he woke up the next morning, and the guy was gone, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, that stranger, he disappeared, but he left behind like this. He was just in the kitchens for a while, and he's like." Throw out everything in the pot, get rid of it all, don't touch it, don't eat it, we're not, because he was freaked out that Odin was there to kill him, basically, because he which shows how much faith you have in the goodness of your own actions. He thought Odin had like poisoned his food.
To be fair, I would not trust Odin.
No, that'd be something Odin would do. Well, I think the people he conquered were like huge Odin worshippers too. Yeah. He was actually a guy, I think he was the guy that was going around, what were those trees they had? This isn't just Game of Thrones, right? Like the Norse actually worship trees, right?
Sort of.
Like he was burning down like their sacred groves or something, like or whatever those were.
Yeah, they do have sacred groves.
That wasn't just Game of Thrones. I think I'm not getting my memories mixed up here. I think he was actually like destroying like the whatever forests.
So that's interesting, actually. If you're walking in the woods, and you meet the king of gods at different pantheons, I would talk with Odin, but I wouldn't turn my back to him. I would basically just cower to Zeus. The Dagda, I think I'd be fine with.
No.
It's like, I'd eat with the Dagda. I'd like eat from his pot. I'd hang out with him.
Yeah. What about like Horus would probably be a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, no, Horus would be fine as long as he didn't try to do his superiority thing. Do you know about I don't know if this is true. I just heard about this, but do you know about the superiority thing in Egypt?
No.
Basically, if you could get someone else to eat your ejaculation, it showed you're superior to them. And so there's this literal thing where Horus gave someone a sandwich to make him gain control of them. And
so don't accept food from Horus.
Yeah. But it's like if they're sleeping, you do it to them. So
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Sounds like British schoolboy pranks taken too far.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, it was basically like a way to pound your chest and say,
The Egyptians were disgusting. Boss. I mean, Ra, the way he created the universe was gross. So
yeah.
It's gross all the way down. So Sargon, anyways, in his video, so I would be curious if I could ever get a chance to ask Sargon another question, like, is he more in line with Charles I? I'd be curious about that. But what Charles said, which ties into a lot of the other stuff we've been talking about, is that liberalism views freedom as teleological. So
is Sargon or Charles said this?
Sargon said this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think teleology was conceptualized back in Charles' day.
You said Charles said this.
Okay. Yeah, no. So Sargon said that liberalism views freedom as teleological. So teleology is the idea of you have an end in mind that you want to achieve. So, and teleology can be applied to multiple things. So, for example, there was a natural science of teleology where you would say, why does it rain? And the answer would be something like, well, because God wants our crops to flourish, right? Because you would say, okay, what is the end that it produces this means, essentially? And so liberalism, their goal is not deontology, which is live righteously, right?
Yeah.
Their goal is move towards freedom. The freedom is the teleology. And I think he's right, because we always talk about freedom and not restricting freedom and more freedom and autonomy and bodily freedom. And now I have seen weird arguments where it's like, if you want more freedom, you need to have more restriction on what you can say. I've seen like papers on that. I was like, when I was looking up this idea of the teleology of liberalism, I actually came across this paper published in, I assume, a garbage journal. I don't remember the journal's name, but it was saying we need to restrict the freedom of speech to preserve freedom, essentially. And I was like, holy cow, that's terrible. But I think that
there's only so much freedom to go around. And so if you want ultimate freedom, you must restrict it so more can be spoken when it is important.
And what is to be done to correct this problem? Beatings with a shoe.
I don't even know what accent I was going for there.
It sounded kind of like Osho, actually, who is, Osho was Indian, wasn't he? He's like Pakistan, sorry. Anyway, Osho, the, democracy for the people, but it sounded like that.
Well, the image I had in my mind is of that fat communist guy with crazy hair who argues for communism, who has a really heavy, hard to understand accents, and his voice is really
Slavlov Zizek?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he's quite a communist, but he's...
That's who I had in my mind when I was saying that.
Yeah.
That's who I was trying to channel,
right,
with knowing very little about him.
Yeah. And I think Sargon is right. I think that most of them...
Well, I listened to him have an argument with Jordan Peterson for 3 hours, and...
I can't stand to listen to him.
Well, it was very wet and stuttery and hard to hear. And then Joyce Pearson would speak, and it's like Kermit the Frog speaking to this wet, grumbling noise.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember a lot from the conversation.
The little from Zizek's reputation, he's one of the few very grounded socialists. So if you have an argument with him, you better come prepared because he'll defeat you, right? He actually knows the theory and he understands it, and so kudos to him on that front. But I would love to listen to him more just to hear what he has to say. But the problem is his voice is just so annoying. I can't. But going back to this idea of liberalism and teleology, I think Sargon's right, because at least on a foundational level, I think a lot of problems with societal decline, perhaps is the way to put it, in the former Commonwealth, the Anglosphere, maybe better term, and beyond even. I think France is having troubles, Germany's having troubles.
All right, let's be honest. Germany and France are part of the Anglosphere. They just rejected our loving embrace. Some annoying French peasant girl showed up.
Yeah, with God, and kicked us out of our rightful land.
I mean, really? Actually, we could have gotten rid of France.
So Charles I's title, right?
Yeah.
Was Charles I, leader of England, Scotland, Wales, and France.
Yeah.
Apparently every British king until, I can't remember, but it was for ages, was called King of France.
Yeah.
Because the whole start of the French-English War, the 100 Years' War, was... the air was contested about who should get France and England, right? And England, for hundreds of years after, they're like, no, we're the rightful rulers of France.
And Normandy was theirs for a long time.
Well, that was the problem, I think, was William had a right to the French and English, his ancestors basically had a right to both thrones, I think. But where was I?
Sargaruni.
Yeah. If you use freedom as your teleology, so every action you make is towards freedom, right? Yeah. That means that you say, okay, should children be spanked by their parents? So, that would make the children less free. So that's wrong, right? So you'd say, okay, so you get rid of that and you move towards freedom. And I think that society was so ossified for such a long time. This was, I guess it's not that long actually, because liberalism's pretty new. That's World War II. But the ideas were growing older than that. moving towards freedom made society better. Like freedom was here and society was getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And then you have this line here, which is about, let's say, the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. Although, yeah, there's other factors why the 2000s were worse. But let's say it's about, like, let's say the mid to late 90s.
I'm going to say 80s.
Where this is like peak freedom benefiting society.
That's when those damn hippies were protesting the Vietnam War when it went wrong.
Well, that was before that.
Yeah.
And I don't think...
That's my cutoff point.
I don't think...
That's my cutoff point.
Anyways, let's say there is a cutoff point, and this could be wrong, but let's say there is a cutoff point. This is where you have peak freedom before you start going down the hole to socialism and Marxism and communism. Because Marxism is essentially, at its foundation, the idea... Marx talks about the collapse of class structures, right? So he said you had the nobility... Sorry, you had the... What's the term? Royalty?
Bourgeoisie.
No.
Aristocracy.
He saw revolutions as cycles.
Yeah.
And so he saw it's not nobility is the term. Aristocracy, I don't think is the term either. I think it's royalty. So he saw royalty as oppressing the nobility. And then the nobility rebelled and they gained power over, that was like the House of Lords, right? That was the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
The king is now subject to his lords.
Yeah.
So that was the Magna Carta. And then you had the lords become subject to the people, and that was Charles I. That was the like the Third English Civil War.
Yeah. The last one.
And then you had that was the end of it. So you had, now the people are in charge, but there are still classes of people.
Yeah.
So you still have the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So Marx believed there would be a final revolution where all hierarchies would collapse into one and everyone would be equal, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at Mao was a bit different. Sorry, not Mao. Mao a bit, I guess, but I was thinking of Ho Chi Minh, maybe? Or am I thinking of the wrong guy? The guy that, no, it wasn't Ho Chi Minh. The guy that killed all the people wearing glasses. He was a communist revolutionary in, like...
Cambodia?
Cambodia, maybe? Yeah. And he basically believed that intellectuals were an oppressive class because intellectuals were superior to a lower group, right? And so that's kind of how communism works, is it's moving towards no hierarchy. So you keep collapsing that down and down and down and down. And so that's more and more freedom because you're free from the oppressive group which is above you. And so the problem with liberalism is if you take it to the end, you arrive at this state because you're not actually aiming for human betterment, you're aiming for freedom. So Sargon's argument is not that liberalism hasn't produced many great things, but that we need a different...
Liberalism ends at Brave New World?
Sort of, I guess. Or it ends at like communism and then revolution. Because the thing about Brave New World, which is most terrifying, is that it's stable, I guess. Which is, like in theory, there should just be a revolution and then you branch off to fascism or something. Yeah. But
well, isn't like Brave New World from the perspective of a explorer encountering this weird civilization?
He was like cryogenically frozen, I think, and then he woke up in the future.
Okay.
I haven't actually read Brave New World, but I believe that's the premise. So what Sargon thinks we need instead of a teleological foundation like liberalism is we need a more deontological based system, which is based. So you should be focused on the means.
But he hates Kant
instead of the ends. Does he hate Kant? He hates Plato.
He also hates Sargon hates Kant.
Okay. Well, or maybe I got him wrong, and he thinks that you should have a better teleology. Yeah. Now, I think teleology is bad, but what he said is you don't want to make freedom your highest goal. You want to be aware that some freedoms and some lacks of freedoms are important, like fidelity to your king, to your father, to your brother, to your neighbor. Like the bonds. For example, if you bond yourself with your neighbor, you become friends. That means you can't shoot your gun randomly in the air because it'll know your neighbor. So you actually restrict your freedom, but you improve yourself and your neighbor. Yeah. And so he believed that bonds actually make life better.
Yeah, it's any ideology brought to its final end is consumes you in tyranny or something. Like I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's like you basically don't want to follow any ideology to its final end.
Right, and
that's his perspective.
Well, I think Kant, right? Kant had two major contributions, right? Deontology, but then also the categorical imperative. And so maybe Sargon is against the categorical imperative because Kant said, if you can do good, then you must do good, right? Yeah. And so therefore, every moment of every day, you have to get up at, like people said they could set their watch by him, right? So I think that might be where he's...
No, he doesn't like his philosophy.
Because I think just the idea of, like, even if Kant's wrong about the need to do good is good, let's say.
Yeah, that's what Sargon doesn't like.
Sargon believes you actually have to do good.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so that's fair enough. But you can still be deontological in this, because deontology is about means instead of ends, right?
Yeah.
So instead of saying we need to move towards freedom, instead you say we need to act good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now Sargon probably believes there are good things, whereas Kant...
Yeah, but he also argues what is acting good because there's so many different cultures, as we explored last episode, of what we might see as good could be different from a person with a different honor system. Yeah.
And I think what Sargon... This is... There's a guy, Ryan Mullally, on YouTube, who I've talked about a little bit before.
Yeah.
And he's a proponent... I don't know if this is the proper term or it's just the one he uses, but it's called common sense Scottish realism. And the foundation of that is essentially... Look, when you're hungry, you have a sensation, and you don't actually know what that sensation is. Like the sensation itself doesn't say, eat 3 apples and 2 bags of carrots, right? It's just like you have a feeling of something, and you go, okay, that is hunger, right?
Yeah.
And so, and if you look at something, you say that is red. So your senses inform you about the world, even if you don't, if you hook them up to a machine, that machine might not be able to say, this is hunger, right?
Yeah.
And so he believes there is a goodness sense. And so you can tell if something is good or if something is wrong. And that's the Scottish common sense moral realism. It's just, if something's good, you can tell it's good.
No, that's coming from a Scot.
Well, he's not Scottish. He's a New Yorker. But it's the Scottish field that found that. But, I mean, Descartes basically said the same thing in more words.
Oh, it's Descartes. I want to skip Descartes and go straight to...
Nietzsche?
No, Jung.
Oh, just like keep going.
Yeah. Go to the end.
Well, I mean, it's not, the conversation's never over.
No, but I mean, go to the current checkpoint.
Yeah. Well, Jordan Peterson is kind of the extension of Jung, I guess. So you could say Jordan Peterson's pushed that further.
Yeah.
And then that guy on that Jubilee video that argued with him is like the guy that beat Jordan Peterson. So now it's what's that atheist YouTuber O'Connor? Like he's really cool. He did an interview recently with some famous Bear Grylls. He did an interview with Bear Grylls recently where they talked about religion. You have this atheist and this guy who's famous for drinking his own piss in the wilderness, and they talked about religion, and it was really well done because he's an atheist, but he's very respectful of religion, and he believes it's a very valuable and important thing for human society. But I think Sargon made a really good point about just liberalism treating freedom as teleological. And I think all teleologies should be, like, the arrogance of teleology is essentially that you can think any one particular outcome is beneficial. But if Sargon thinks there is good, the problem is that freedom as an outcome isn't the same as saying good as an outcome.
Yes.
And it's the same thing communists do where they say...
Well, so in his video, I think I know your video you're talking about, is he made the argument that liberalism believes... The ultimate point of liberalism is that we started as babes in the wood who are completely free. And then
everywhere we're in chains.
And then society came and chained us.
Yeah.
And so the ultimate end goal of liberalism
is to remove those chains.
Remove those chains and return us to primordial freedom of the individual in the woods. However, you are born... His argument is you are born to a mother and father... and the bonds of the family around you. You are born to be an Englishman or a Scotsman or Indian.
Yeah.
And these are inherent to your nature. They are not chains. They are who you are.
Or even, you could even...
Or you are born into chains.
Or you could say that, don't call them chains, call them bonds.
Yeah.
And freedom cuts those bonds. And you shouldn't just cut these bonds. Yeah. These are important bonds to keep. And I think Sargon's right. But the problem is he's basically arguing for a position that I think was, like, in the 20s... was fairly popular in a lot of ways, like the 1920s. And the reason we have what we have now is because of the devastation wrought by people abusing and corrupting that system of fidelity, right? So if you, for example, in how to win friends and influence people. He has a section. Remember, this book was written in the 20s or the 10s or even. And he has a section talking about how marriage satisfaction's at like 40% and 60% of people in marriage are miserable. This was before divorce was legal.
Yeah.
And nowadays people say, oh, we have so much, we legalized divorce and now families are miserable. And it's like, no, they were miserable before divorce was legalized. And they're actually happier now than they were back then. But now we have this mess with divorce. So obviously the solution might have been too heavy-handed in some way. But the problem at its core...
Well, I think it is maybe the couples are happier being separated, but the children are more miserable.
Oh, no, sorry. Marriages today are happier. Like, not divorces. Marriages today are happier than marriages were back in the 20s.
Yeah.
After we legalized divorce. People were miserable in the 20s. Like, not everyone, but it was like 60% of people in a marriage hated their marriage. And nowadays, much more people like their marriages.
Yeah, there's just not many marriages.
There's less marriages. And so the solution isn't to outlaw divorce again. Because you can say, oh yeah, but people, they stuck together. And but it was actually a real problem that people were talking about. Like, we made divorce legal for a reason because there's this huge problem. And same with what Sargon's talking about with these bonds.